Cannot wait to hear from you. You can go to refinedivinepsychic.com.
Greg Bakun here. I love historic tours of Minneapolis and seeing everything it has to offer. But if you know me, I like to include a little spooky in my tours, which is why I found the perfect combination. Minneapolis Trolley Tours does this amazing candlelight ghost tour that you have to check out. It's an extremely immersive experience. It's a trolley trip that starts out at a haunted mansion, traveling around Minneapolis locations, exposing ghost stories that the public and business owners would rather left untold. Then a tour of the aforementioned haunted mansion where ghosts of past residents from the 1800s reside, plus a lot of surprises to discover. Next, experience Gertrude's After Hours. Did I mention Gertrude is the mansion's most famous ghost? Maybe she'll show up. And you finish up the tour at Gertrude's Lounge in the haunted basement of the mansion with refreshments and Q&A. The trolleys are climate controlled and the mansion is restored to perfection. Check out MinneapolisTrolleyTours.com for more information.
With your AM 950 weather, I'm Patrick Lilia. Evening showers and storms possible with an overnight low of 61, then Wednesday clearing skies with a high of 77. For more than 40 years, the Great Wall Restaurant has been serving up Szechuan and Mandarin favorites. The Great Wall is located just north of 50th in France on the Minneapolis-Edina City line. Check them out at greatwallrestaurant.us.
Portions of the following program may be pre-recorded.
The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host, guest, random reptoid, or chupacabra may not necessarily reflect those of AM 950 Radio, its affiliates, or its sponsors. Now, it's time to step into the unknown. There are things people experience but never talk about. A shadow moving in the corner, flickering of the lights, a disembodied voice. We invite you to talk with us. Share your story, share your experience, because this isn't just your story, this is our story. This is GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun.
And this is GhostBox Radio on AM 950, where every night we talk about the paranormal, ufology, Bigfoot, and so much more. My name is Greg Bakun. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. You know, as I was getting ready for the program, I was looking outside and I thought, man, this is a perfect night for this conversation because it is rainy. It is, we have some dense fog in the area. This is a perfect night to talk about a new book that literally has just come out through Visible Ink called Ghostly Encounters, Terrifyingly True Hauntings. This is a book that is written by prolific author Richard Estep. And we've had Richard on one time before. I've known Richard for a while. We're both Doctor Who fans, so right away I like him immediately. This is one of those things that I'm excited to talk about because I love hearing other people's ghost stories. I love hearing people putting these stories together and kind of curating them. And I'm very curious about this. And Richard, is it fair to say that we can't say how many books you have? It's countless books. Can we just say you have countless books that you've written now?
Yeah, I mean, it's not that tough to count.
No, it is actually. It's fairly difficult.
It's like 44. There are some that are hard to find. There was one I didn't know I'd written, which was kind of funny. So for anyone who's a collector, who's a purist, or I should say completist, Visiting the Ghost Ward is the one that's hard to get because I didn't know I'd written it.
How does that happen? I mean, did you just like do it in your sleep every night and something got published, or?
I wrote a book called World's Most Haunted Hospitals. That's the third book I wrote, I think, second or third. And one night, somebody messaged me, a reader, and said, "Hey, Visiting the Ghost Ward. This is kind of pricey, but it's a hardcover. That's great. What's the deal with it?" And I said, "I don't know. I didn't write it." So I looked it up on Amazon. I'm like, "Well, my name's on it. That's kind of interesting." And it turned out that the publisher had sold it to subcontracted it, if you will, the rights for a library version for kids. So basically, they took it down a couple of notches of scariness. They gave it library binding, which is why it was so expensive, and they turned it into a a library book for kids. So I had to buy my own copy of that book, which I'll never forget. I didn't even get one. But that's a hard one to find. But we're at like 44 books right now, and I'm contracted out with books through 2027 in addition to the stuff I self-publish. So
That's incredible. That's absolutely incredible. And Richard, if you're wondering why you keep disappearing on the screen, it's a very good question. Everything I do on StreamYard tonight results you in disappearing, and that's just bizarre to me. But whatever,
it's
we'll
appropriate
make you.
based on the subject matter. It's appropriate.
It is. And for folks, now he's here, now he isn't. We'll just see how the night goes. So the book is called Ghostly Encounters, Terrifyingly True Hauntings. What is this book about? I mean, obviously the cover is good enough to as a descriptor.
It's about 300 pages, Greg, and now I've made the predictable, obvious dad joke. Oh, I'm sorry. We're being visited by my dog. Do you mind? Hello, Lilith, and say hi to the audience. She always likes to help out with interviews.
The show is so pet friendly. You're more the merrier.
Good. Well, when I was growing up, I don't know how it was for you, but I used to get books by people like Peter Underwood, Hans Holzer, and they were kind of like best of ghost stories. You'd learn about a whole bunch of cases, and I'd wanted to do something along those lines, so I pitched it to Visible Ink with the working title of Great Hauntings, and I know that's a really subjective term. You could ask any 20 paranormal enthusiasts what their great hauntings are, 10 great hauntings, and you'll get 10 different lists, right? So that's the joy of it. It's almost like a pub conversation waiting to happen.
Yep.
And so I'd wanted to pick some of what I considered the classic cases, shine some fresh light on them, look back on them with the perspective of a few years. Some of them I really hadn't revisited since childhood, and do my slant on them. And Visible Ink, as is their right, changed the title from Great Hauntings to Ghostly Encounters. But that really is the theme, some of what I consider to be the great hauntings of our age.
And then, so with that, you are going back to these cases or these hauntings, and you're adding to them. You are, or not adding to them, but you are putting your thoughts to them and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, one of the poster children for the classic Great Haunting. If you ask most Brits of my age, what they considered to be the greatest haunting story, they would have gone with Borley Rectory, right? The most haunted house in England, styled by Harry Price, the Ghost Hunter. Growing up, I read everything I could on that place. I wanted to visit so bad, but of course it burned down 30 years before I was born, under mysterious circumstances. And there's been so much debate over the years of how much was real. Harry Price, being the flamboyant showman, was caught faking. Unquestionably, he made some of that stuff up, but not all of it. And there were ghost stories associated with Borley, actually kind of prior to the rectory being built. So it's the quintessential British countryside haunting, and this is not criticism as such, but I'm 52, and so when I was growing up, my idea of a ghost hunter was kind of the Peter Underwood, Harry Price type. It was very sensible men in tweed jackets with leather patches on, smoking a pipe, wandering around looking for ladies in white dresses, at midnight graveyards. Sure. And I kind of missed that. I could never have predicted when I was getting my love for all things ghostly that they would metamorphosize into men in very tight t-shirts and Ray-Bans screaming, "Come at me, ghost." Who could ever have envisioned it? But I get nostalgic for that.
Well, it sounds like, I mean, for those who've ever seen the British series Hadley, it sounds like that's who you're thinking of as your ghost hunters back in the day. And everyone does have to wear black, and everyone has to wear tight t-shirts, and that's always problematic for me. That kind of turns a lot of people away. But what can you do?
And you can see this stuff on YouTube, though. There is a great documentary I encourage people to look at called The Ghost Hunters. It's a BBC documentary from the 70s, long before Ghost Hunters was an American show. And it involves Borley Rectory. And you just have, we needed more female representation. That's the only thing that's wrong with it. But you have these, kind of very sensible, almost dull men pointing with their pipes. They're sitting out there at like midnight going, "This is the place where the phantom nun is supposed to walk over there. Did you bring the cheese and onion sandwiches? We're going to keep a vigil from midnight to sunrise." The kind of stuff you would never ever see on TV.
That's fantastic.
But that was so exciting and old school when I was growing up. and my love and passion for, they did call themselves ghost hunters, for ghost hunting kind of was born with them.
That's really interesting. I'm going to have to see if I can find. You said that's on YouTube. I was just going to say, and you turned me on to these people, and it's kind of a sidebar here, but Scarred for Life. They had posted today, about a show called Fabulous Animals that David Attenborough hosted, and it talked about cryptozoology, Bigfoot, Nessies. I've never heard of that or seen it before, but I need to get a hold of that somewhere too. And that's, I mean, it might be on YouTube, but I have people who can get it for me as well. That sounds amazing.
I'm so glad you got on board the Scarred for Life train. I love their books. I've forgotten how horrific my childhood was in some ways, but also really wonderful ways. And I know that makes no sense. It does to you, I'm sure.
Yes.
But just the commercials we had in Britain growing up in the 70s. There was one where a couple of kids are playing with a frisbee and it hits like a high voltage power line. And of course, it was the classic, do not go near high voltage power lines.
Yes.
Kid goes for said frisbee, climbs the pylon. You get this actinic flash of light, and then dead kid on the ground, literally steaming and smoking.
I've seen it.
And have you seen the one with the Grim Reaper by the water? Oh my God, this is so terrifying.
I wish.
It's kids that are swimming by like a pond or a lake or a quarry, the kind of place that almost all Doctor Who episodes were shot.
Yeah.
And they go near the water, and of course one of them slips in, and I kid you not, this excuse me, this robed, hooded, death-like figure, the only thing it's missing is a scythe, is standing there just pointing, at them like the Reaper has come for you. And this was designed to scare 6, 7, 8-year-old kids out of going near waters, and it didn't even work. That's the other thing. As terrifying as they were, we ignored them anyway.
No, there was a release that I saw a lot of those on called Charlie Says, and I mean, and there's also the ones where if you don't wear your safety, your seatbelt, and there's all those commercials end with somebody braking real hard and their head going through a windshield.
Yeah.
Those. I mean, they really, and it was same over here. They really tried to pack that in. I remember one growing up as a kid that there was a PSA about leaving a plastic bag out, this clear plastic bag, and an infant is walking toward, crawling towards it. The next shot is clearly not a real infant, but in this plastic bag.
Yeah,
and just still, and it's like, whoa, holy cow. That's incredible.
There were a number of phrases that British mothers were legally obligated to use if they were British mums. And the most common one was, you'll have somebody's eye out with that. And it could be anything from a pen to a pencil to, I don't know, a chair. You'll have somebody's eye out with that. I never did, and nor did anyone I ever grew up with. But that was kind of, I guess, part of the mums union.
No.
But I feel like we've drifted from ghosts a little bit.
Do you think so? A little bit?
Just a tad.
Just a tad. I was going to ask you because we're gonna take a break here in a few minutes, and we got time here. But what is it? Do you think it is that people want to be scared by these type of stories? And back in the day, I'd read ghost stories and be like, I don't know, maybe it's real, but you kind of thinking not really. Now, as doing this for a number of years. And like, I know the stuff that you're writing about, I believe it. Why do we like to be scared by this?
I think it's a safe scare, in the same way that a roller coaster is, or Final Destination 7, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think that we enjoy that. It's cathartic, but I also think we are gearing up towards that time of year when the nights draw in, when, the summer is kind of waning and our minds are turning towards ghosts. It happens without fail every September, October, November. We all love a good ghost story. And even in December, the classic ghost story, the archetype is, of course, A Christmas Carol. Scrooge and his three ghosts, So I think it's something about it's that part of us that still sits around fires on dark winter nights. And humankind has done this for generations. We are natural storytellers, and to be safely scared has always been a part of the human tradition, and it just adds a bit more of a frisson if that scare is believed to be true.
It's interesting that you bring up A Christmas Carol, because I know in the UK, a big thing back in the 70s, and it tried to restart a couple times. It's Ghost Stories for Christmas.
Yeah.
The banner. And I don't feel like we have that sort of inclination so much in the US about, the connection of Ghost Story with Christmas, with the exception of Scrooge, which I think people don't realize. I don't think people realize it's a ghost story. But do you have any thoughts on to why that has picked up more in the UK, of that direct correlation between ghost stories and Christmas?
I think there are cultural differences. For example, the US is the country that gave us Scrooge McDuck. So, you are the nation that took Ebenezer Scrooge, the classic character,
We would do that, yeah.
and turned him into a duck.
Yeah.
And
your point is no.
I'm not knocking it. I mean, I will die on this hill. The greatest version of A Christmas Carol ever is A Muppets Christmas Carol.
Yes.
Right?
With Michael Caine.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And there's a joke doing the rounds where, the director supposedly says to Michael, and of course this is just a meme, but it's like, okay, so Michael, so remember, you're Scrooge, but it's a Muppets movie, so have some fun with it. And Michael Caine is like, I will be playing this role as seriously as a heart attack. And he does, which makes it even funnier.
That's great.
But it shows you, doesn't it? You can take the same story, the same plot elements, and mine comedy from it. You can mine tragedy from it. But the thing about Christmas Carol, I think, is it's so cathartic. And I would also argue that the city of London is a big character in that story. Yeah. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
The idea of, the streets of London, you see it in every version of the story. Scrooge leaning out of the window on Christmas morning and things like that. So I just think it really culturally connects with the Brits, and it has done for so many years.
And the US loves British stories like that, where we have an idea of what England should look like all the time. I think everyone thinks that it's perpetually Victorian London everywhere you go. And
you're right, Greg. But here's the thing: my own memory now plays tricks, and I've had this conversation with my friends. White Christmases, right? In my memory, childhood Christmases are all white Christmases, thanks to so many years of movies about this. Turns out I had maybe 3 in my first 20 years of life. And they define a white Christmas, by the way, as one snowflake dropping on the roof of the Met Center in London, like a single snowflake. That's a white Christmas, officially. Congrats. It almost never happens, certainly not anymore.
No,
But-
well, as it happens, I would about 5 years ago, I went out to the UK for Christmas, and I went to, and there's like, oh, it must be so beautiful, and I literally had to explain to them, I'm going to Birmingham. I'm going to Birmingham, and
okay.
the thing is, Birmingham is just a wonderful blue collar.
It is
city. It's not Victorian London, and nor is a lot of London. So we have all of that.
Yeah, but I do love Birmingham. I have friends from there. It is not quaint. It is not Christmassy. It just isn't. But you brought up this kind of link between Christmas and ghosts, and I just think, the BBC did a ghost story for Christmas, and it became a long-running tradition. And man, did they do some terrifying ones? Yes. And these aren't stories with gore. These aren't stories with blood. There are some that are as simple as, have you seen the one called "Oh Whistle My Lad Now Come to You"? It's just basically a white sheet on the beach. Yep. A white sheet on the beach terrified an entire nation. It shows that spooky beats gross out every time, I think.
I think so too. And don't forget too that not necessarily ghost stories for Christmas, but on Christmas you had the Stone Tape, and Count Dracula in 1977 on Christmas. So
for sure. Yep, Stone Tape. Now we're talking. Stone Tape theory, of course, is one that's well known to pretty much everyone in the paranormal field.
Yep.
The Stone Tape was genuinely frightening, and even though the special effects have not aged well, the story really has. You could make that movie today. In fact, I would argue, in an age when we're all sick of remakes, that's one that is just primed to be done again well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I need to get a break in here. We were just chatting away, and I remember I have a job here to do as well. Well, kind of. Why don't we do this? Let's go ahead and take our first break. When we come back, let's talk about the book. How about that?
Sounds good.
Yeah, let's do that. We're going to be right back. We got Richard Estep with us tonight. We're talking about ghostly encounters, terrifyingly true hauntings. You're listening to GhostBox Radio on AM 950. Greg Bakun here. I've told you about the out-of-the-world roast beef sandwiches at Maverick's Real Roast Beef, but I haven't told you about their Philly steak sandwiches, turkey bacon avocado sandwich, BLT, crispy chicken, fish sandwiches, brisket, or pulled pork. Okay, you get the idea. They make a lot of delicious food to the same standard as their famous roast beef sandwiches, and now I'm starving. I'm going to go to Maverick's Real Roast Beef off Lexington and Roseville, and you need to go too. Check out their menu at mavericksbeef.com. Have you ever met someone who not only can help you on a deep spiritual level, but also potentially change your life? Refined Divine is an extremely gifted psychic medium who travels the nation and lives right here in the Midwest. And she offers mediumship, mentorship, house and business parties, energy healing, palm readings, and so much more. Refined Divine has helped thousands, and she can help you.
Hi, this is Psychic Medium Deb. I cannot wait to hear from you. You can go to refineddivinepsychic.com.
Greg Bakun here. I love historic tours of Minneapolis and seeing everything it has to offer. But if you know me, I like to include a little spooky in my tours, which is why I found the perfect combination. Minneapolis Trolley Tours does this amazing candlelight ghost tour that you have to check out. It's an extremely immersive experience. It's a trolley trip that starts out at a haunted mansion, traveling around Minneapolis locations exposing ghost stories that the public and business owners would rather left untold. Then a tour of the aforementioned haunted mansion where ghosts of past residents from the 1800s reside, plus a lot of surprises to discover. Next, experience Gertrude's After Hours. Did I mention Gertrude is the mansion's most famous ghost? Maybe she'll show up. And you finish up the tour at Gertrude's Lounge in the haunted basement of the mansion with refreshments and Q&A. The trolleys are climate controlled and the mansion is restored to perfection. Check out MinneapolisTrolleyTours.com for more information. And I think we'll be talking a little bit more about the Minneapolis Trolley Tours next week. There's some changes going on there, good changes. We talked a little bit about the Pillsbury Mansion and whatnot. We'll be talking a little bit more about that next week. I also want to remind folks, this Thursday in Anoka over at Divine Lights, Char Savoy and myself will be heading a paranormal investigation of the basement of Divine Lights. The building was built in the late 1800s. Anoka, as you know, is a very haunted city. It is called the Halloween capital of the world, and we've done a couple of investigations here. Each month, the activity has become more and more as they're getting more used to us, and we'd love you to come out and investigate with us. To do so, go over on Facebook, go to Charvinity, and once you're at Charvinity on Facebook, go to events. It's called Anoka Paranormal Investigation. You can get tickets. That's going to be this Thursday. It starts at 6 p.m. It's going to be a lot of fun. I have some new equipment I'm going to be bringing out there as well. We are talking about ghostly encounters, terrifyingly true hauntings with author Richard Estep tonight. I just want to say real fast that the book is available all over the place, but, why don't you go to your local bookseller? And if they don't have it, request it. They'll order it for you. That's not a problem. And keep business going to the small bookstores. They need our help. So please consider doing so. Richard, can we talk about a couple of these locations in the book?
Absolutely. And I want to echo what you said about small, independently owned bookstores. Absolutely. They could use your help. And I endorse what you said entirely. Did you want to talk about specific locations you had in mind, or did you want me to pick some?
Can I start with one? Yeah, I have a couple, but because we talked a little bit about Borley Rectory, but I want to go because I mean I've been here and I feel so like connected to it to a certain degree is Gettysburg.
Oh yeah, absolutely. One of my favorite towns in the world, if not the favorite.
What is it, do you think, too? I'm giving you I'm throwing a lot of hypotheticals at you tonight. I'm just curious about your thoughts. Since you've been to so many of these places, you've investigated a lot of places. I said I feel like I am connected to Gettysburg. I hear a lot of people who investigate these locations. They feel the same way about certain locations. They call it, it's I'm back home. They say stuff like that. Why do you think that is? Do you think that's just that we're just comfortable, or do you think that there's maybe something more deeply attached to us going to some of these places?
That's a great question. So Gettysburg feels different to most other towns, even haunted locations.
Yeah.
It feels to me as if the past and our own time are somehow closer together in Gettysburg than they are anywhere else, Tombstone, Arizona has a very similar feel, but
Yes.
Gettysburg takes the prize when it comes to that sensation. And it might be the presence of reenactors always wandering around. It might be the way that the town has retained so much of its character. But you just get the feeling in Gettysburg, you can reach out and almost touch the past.
Yeah.
And maybe the monuments have something to do with it, Greg. The idea that the graven images of these men who fought, bled, and in some cases died are looking down at you as you walk around. I think that plays a role in it too. History is kept alive, but I also think history never entirely died in Gettysburg.
I would agree 100%. And the only time I've been there, we went to the battlefields, rather naughty. We went to the battlefields around 2:33 in the morning.
Oh.
And I know I shouldn't even say this publicly. I could be arrested, right? But I will never forget. It was after a storm. It was kind of there. There was some kind of light of some kind in the sky, and all the trees were silhouetted, and it was so calm.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never experienced it. And like you said about both Gettysburg and Tombstone, I've been to both.
Mm-hmm.
These are different types of places. And I also wonder, to a certain degree, with Gettysburg is not it's not a souvenir shop. It's a working town, which I think is different than a lot of these sort of places, like Deadwood, for example, which is, streets of people selling T-shirts.
Yeah,
it's still working. I mean, it's like the town never never stopped. It never took a beat. It just kept going.
You make a good point. I mean, there is certainly tourism there, especially ghost tourism these days, which is something that is quite controversial, and the Park Service is not a fan of at all. The last time I was in Gettysburg, I will never forget, because we were actually staying on one of the Park Service owned farms on the battlefield.
Wow.
And it was the night of the Aurora Borealis, which the pictures we got that night were just incredible, and it made the place seem even more magical. But it would be remarkable if Gettysburg did not have paranormal activity, and everyone I know that's been there, it seems, has some story to tell. My friend Jason and I, now maybe 7-8 years ago, were walking across Pickett's Charge one morning right after sunrise, when it was legal to do so, and we heard and recorded the sound of what was clearly cannon fire. Now, Pickett's Charge was preceded by the largest artillery cannonade the North American continent has ever seen. So loud, they heard it in Philadelphia,
Yeah.
And surprisingly, it was not all that effective, but it was spectacular. And musketry is often heard there. Brad and Barry Kling, who I was with at the time, recorded clearly the sound of a bugle being played at like 3 o'clock in the morning on the battlefield from our farm. Nobody's out reenacting at 3 in the morning. I don't care who you are.
No.
No. And so, it's almost hard not to have some kind of ghostly encounter when you go to Gettysburg. And you are spoiled for choice in terms of locations. The Farnsworth House is a favorite, of course. The Jenny Wade House, the former orphanage. So many hot spots. And the good thing is that I think go for the ghosts, but stay for the history. The paranormal attracts people, attracts tourists and enthusiasts. Of course it does. But when you're there, you get to take some time to learn about the lives of the men and women behind the stories.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. I just the thing that struck me so much was all those monuments on the battlefield, like you said, the statues, and finding out like how many are there, and how did they, even just like who put them there? I mean, like those. If you don't know, you don't know, and you look it up. I will say I did an investigation at Air Ridge, and we were in a room, and things were getting pretty progressive in there, and all of a sudden we hear this huge cannon fire.
Yeah.
And we're just like, what on earth is that? And we saw that there's people outside smoking, and we just open up the door and we're like, hey, did you hear that cannon? Not one of them heard it.
Makes absolute sense to me. Cannon fire, musketry, rifle fire, very commonly reported in and around Gettysburg. And of course, if it's the middle of the day, you sometimes think, is that reenactors doing
Yep.
their thing?
Yep.
But everybody's going to hear that, right?
Yep.
So yeah, you've
Absolutely.
got your own magical little ghostly experience from Gettysburg. I think that's terrific.
It's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. And when you look at something like Gettysburg and you're putting into your book, what exactly are you doing, say, with that particular location, as far as you putting that into your book and adding to it and putting your thoughts to it? What are you doing?
Well, I've written much lengthier books about locations in Gettysburg specifically. So the Farnsworth House haunting, the Fairfield haunting, those are both, location specific. And I take a deep dive into not just those locations, but their role in the Battle of Gettysburg. With a book like this one, Ghostly Encounters, each chapter is more an overview. I designed this, honestly, to be a bathroom book. Like, stick it by your toilet or your bedside, delve into a chapter when you have 5 minutes to spare. And if I've done my job well, it will encourage you to either go visit Gettysburg yourself, which would be optimal in my view, or to go learn more about the situation, go read some, lengthier books. Mark Nesbitt's books on the ghosts of Gettysburg, for me, are gold standard. Mark is the keeper of the ghost lore of that town. So hopefully I've whetted some appetites. And the same is true of the chapter with Tombstone. I'm working on a full-length book about the ghosts of Tombstone. I've investigated them multiple times, but giving an overview and then just talking about why these places are so haunted. One thing that Gettysburg and Tombstone have in common is the reenactment. The gunfight at the OK Corral, the most famous 30 seconds of all Western history, right? What do they say? 30 shots fired in 30 seconds, right? Everyone knows about it. Well, that is reenacted at the site 3 times a day.
Yes, it is.
The Earps and Doc Holliday always win, except on April Fool's Day.
I didn't know that.
When the bad guys are allowed to win, which I think is a lovely touch, But then it got me thinking, in both cases, they reenact in order to, yes, tourism, but also to keep the history alive. But does this keep a kind of psychic scar open? If you're just doing this over and over and over again, men died in that gunfight, and as a consequence of it, are you preventing this, wound from closing and healing? Kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it?
I wonder the same thing in different fashions. For example, we have Adam, who does the show with me a couple nights a week. We have theorized just doing the show, which we're not even talking about a location that is attracting paranormal activity. We've had a number of times that things have happened that we can't explain. Those are sort of things that is kind of like really, just to me, really interesting. And you're right. What if they can't rest because there are people redoing it every single day, 3 times a day, as you said? Just incredible.
And again, reenactment, the same deal at Gettysburg. Every 4th of July weekend, out come the cannon, out come the blue and the gray armies, and they go at it. Phantom battles, by the way, used to be a thing. Talking about ghost stories from my childhood again for a minute, you used to hear about these great phantom battles, like in the British Civil War. We had Edge Hill, the English Civil War, rather. Edge Hill, which was famously fought in the skies over the actual battlefield. You don't seem to hear about them anymore, and I always wondered why that was the case. You hear about phantom soldiers and stuff like that, but I always wanted to know, why is there no phantom battle of Normandy, or Arnhem or whatever? Why is that no longer a thing?
Especially being by water and all.
I actually want to file that one away to think about it a little bit more, because it's an interesting question.
It is. Getting back to Gettysburg real fast, do you have a favorite place that you like to investigate when you're there?
Hands down, the Farnsworth House Inn. I mean, I love that whole town, but the Farnsworth House is where I always stay. And of course, I'm biased. I wrote its haunted history, but there have been other books written that are just pure history of that house. It was a Confederate sniper nest during the battle, and it's been hypothesized that the shot which killed Jenny Wade, the only civilian to die in the battle, was actually fired from the garret, the attic of the Farnsworth House. And I've had some incredible activity there. I got jabbed in the back by unseen fingers while I was sitting in the basement of the Farnsworth house. I will never forget that experience in my life.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What about Tombstone?
Tombstone is one of those towns I'm always happy to go back to. The OK Corral, we got an EVP there. My friend Brad Blair was recording.
Brad, yeah.
Oh, you know Brad
I
Blair?
know of Brad. I'm not, I know.
Yeah, excellent. We had a team of investigators recording, and we actually took a Ouija board into the OK Corral and recorded the sound of a male voice after he asked the question very specifically: if you could leave here, where would you go? A male voice, and it sounded so sad. This is what pulls the heartstrings. Just said, "I'd go home."
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
But then Tombstone's built on mines. It's the reason that Tombstone existed, these claims. So they have all these really colorful names. And we got to go down into one of the mines. The mines are haunted as well. Phantom Miners, which immediately put me in mind of like a Scooby-Doo episode, the miner with the headlamp and the pickaxe and stuff like that. But Phantom Miners have been seen by several visitors that are not connected down in the under the rock beneath the streets of Tombstone. So I love the idea that not only is the town haunted, but also the subterranean underlayer is too.
Tracy in the comments, Tracy from Gettysburg, I'm sure you know her. The shadow guy at the OK Corral, that's the report we get. It sounds great.
Yeah,
I'd like to see that.
And there are some stories that like one of the men, I want to say it was one of the Clantons, but I could be wrong. So don't swear me to it. Is supposed to be seen kind of lurking on that street corner as well. I was fortunate enough to walk down the main street in Tombstone at 2:00 in the morning in my full regalia. I had a duster, I had a Stetson on, and the feeling of doing that, walking in the footsteps of the Earps and the Clantons and Doc Holliday, is just absolutely unbelievable. And so many of those businesses and those establishments have their ghost stories. So is that Tracy from Tombstone or Tracy from Gettysburg?
No, from Tombstone.
I want to give Tracy a big shout out because she was instrumental in me getting access to some of those haunted locations. So thanks for tuning in tonight, Tracy, and thanks for all your help. When my book comes out, you will not go unrecognized.
The place that I always say when I talk about Tombstone is China Mary's house.
Yeah, and China Mary's grave. Like, talk about an amazing woman. Now, I never got to investigate China Mary's house. But when I went to her grave, obviously it's not the kind of nickname that's appropriate today, but investigating Boot Hill, the cemetery, the most famous cemetery in the whole West, you would see the sad things like a grave that just said 2 Chinamen, showing that Chinese men and women, many of them were not even considered worthy of remembering or recording their names. They were disposable labor. The same was true of the Irish and other immigrants. But China Mary, as she was called, was so influential. She supposedly had the biggest funeral in Tombstone's history. She was beloved by everyone across the spectrum of the strata of life, and apparently had her fingers in quite a few pies, many of them not entirely legal.
I've always understood that she was instrumental in getting Chinese people jobs, not just in Tombstone, but around. And if you messed with her and you were out, and that meant that no one would hire you because she was that influential.
Yeah.
And when over at China Mary's, when we did the investigation over there, we were starting to get some stuff, but things got a lot more interesting when we started talking money, as it happens.
And she was a shrewd businesswoman.
She was.
You know, Greg, I love a good Western. You can never have too many cowboy movies for me, but I would love to see a good biopic talk about a strong woman. Let's see a good biopic of China Mary and her life and death.
Totally. Very much so. Very much so. Why don't we go ahead and do this? I want to get our second break in here as we can, and we can keep talking about the book. Once again, the book is called Ghostly Encounters. So nothing's working around here tonight. What can I say? Ghostly Encounters, Terrifyingly True Hauntings. Our guest is Richard Estep. We're going to take a break. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to GhostBox Radio on AM 950. Greg Bakun here. I've told you about the out-of-the-world roast beef sandwiches at Maverick's Real Roast Beef, but I haven't told you about their Philly steak sandwiches, turkey bacon avocado sandwich, BLT, crispy chicken, fish sandwiches, brisket, or pulled pork. Okay, you get the idea. They make a lot of delicious food to the same standard as their famous roast beef sandwiches, and now I'm starving. I'm going to go to Maverick's Real Roast Beef off Lexington and Roseville, and you need to go too. Check out their menu at mavericksbeef.com. Have you ever met someone who not only can help you on a deep spiritual level, but also potentially change your life? Refined Divine is an extremely gifted psychic medium who travels the nation and lives right here in the Midwest. And she offers mediumship, mentorship, house and business parties, energy healing, palm readings, and so much more. Refined Divine has helped thousands, and she can help you.
Hi, this is Psychic Medium Deb. I cannot wait to hear from you. You can go to refineddivinepsychic.com.
Greg Bakun here. I love historic tours of Minneapolis and seeing everything it has to offer. But if you know me, I like to include a little spooky in my tours, which is why I found the perfect combination. Minneapolis Trolley Tours does this amazing candlelight ghost tour that you have to check out. It's an extremely immersive experience. It's a trolley trip that starts out at a haunted mansion, traveling around Minneapolis locations exposing ghost stories that the public and business owners would rather left untold. Then a tour of the aforementioned haunted mansion where ghosts of past residents from the 1800s reside, plus a lot of surprises to discover. Next, experience Gertrude's After Hours. Did I mention Gertrude is the mansion's most famous ghost? Maybe she'll show up. And you finish up the tour at Gertrude's Lounge in the haunted basement of the mansion with refreshments and Q&A. The trolleys are climate controlled and the mansion is restored to perfection. Check out MinneapolisTrolleyTours.com for more information. And join me tomorrow on GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun. We will be having a conversation with author Mark J. Seifer. We're going to be talking about his book, Wizard, The Life and Times of Nikola Tesla. That's going to be a very interesting conversation. Thursday, we are going to do a replay from a conversation I had with Joseph Lonnie on the 20th anniversary of September 11th. Joseph he wasn't there at the site on the World Trade Center the day of the attacks, but he was instrumental at killing fields, is what they call it. And it started his journey as being a medium. We're going to be talking about that and talking about what he experienced. It's a very interesting conversation. Friday, of course, is going to be Casual Friday, so hope you can join us for that as well. We are talking with Richard Estep. We are talking about his new book, Ghostly Encounters, Terrifyingly True Hauntings, available everywhere. But like we said, please consider going to a local bookstore. I want to throw something at you out of left field. I've been thinking about this last couple of days. Wanted your thoughts on it. We are in a kind of a generation. Our generation is I think that during our time, people being interested in spirits and ghosts is of an all-time high, I think. Possibly. I mean, maybe going far back it isn't, but where I'm getting at with this is when we pass on, when our generation passes on, because of so many of us becoming investigators and stuff, do you think there's a possibility that we, as we pass on, will make it easier for those who follow us to communicate with spirit better, because we've been really focusing so much of our lives on this sort of thing?
I've often thought about this. I mean, we've seen great resurgences of interest in the paranormal and spiritualism when there has been a great war. So we saw it after the Civil War, of course, and
Yep.
the Fox sisters and all that entailed. We saw it after World War One and somewhat after the Second World War. And now it is just in vogue, primarily, I think, thanks to paranormal reality television and Hollywood and so on and so forth. So one would think that as more and more of us who are into this move onto that side of the veil, that it would be easier. But I've got a suspicion. I've always believed that life here is like a school experience, you know? And I think many of us are dumb enough to have signed up for like a 201 or 202 class instead of 101. It feels that way sometimes, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I really have this suspicion, having talked to several mediums, they tend to support it, that those on the other side are not permitted to give us all the answers and make it too easy for us.
Right.
In the same way that you're not supposed to see the test, you don't get to see the midterm test, you don't get to see the final. Now, life gives us many little tests, but I think I'm of the opinion that all will be revealed to us when we get over there finally.
Mhm.
And at that point, we might be given the equivalent of a list of rules and regulations that says, hey, you can't tell them about this, or let them learn that for themselves. That's my thought.
I get what you're talking about. I was actually going even just a little bit more simpler of like, we could just communicate better. Not necessarily like what's going to happen, but it's a very good point, actually. And I often have held that belief about mediums in general, that themselves and a kind of a radius around them of close people, that they can't really read them as well. Like to your point, you're not really allowed to know certain things. It's like a psychic medium can't really tell for themselves. I mean, there'll be people telling me I'm wrong here, but we'll be able to say when they're going to die. That's information that's not privy to them. It shouldn't be privy to them.
Yeah, but in terms of ease of communication, a great question is, has technology helped us all that much,
Yeah.
I think that we see, since the advent of the EVP, we've seen these on reel-to-reel tape recorders, and now we see them on analog recorders and digital voice recorders. That's probably the easiest way of communicating, right? The ghost box, to borrow a phrase, is controversial.
Yep.
The spirit box. And then there are other applications and technological solutions which range anywhere from they're of questionable value to their outright flim-flam,
Yep. Yep.
So it's tough to say, I think. I don't know that we've got any more. I don't know that we've. What was that?
What did you get?
I just heard what sounded like a blast of wind to come through your speaker. That was kind of cool.
Oh, I'll have to go and let me time check that. Yeah.
Mark that and check it.
Yeah.
I was going to say, though, I don't know that we've gotten any more truly compelling evidence than in the past. Would you say?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
interesting. It's interesting, isn't it? And that's what I love about all this. So it just keeps evolving, but also like kind of keeps still at the same time.
Yeah, and one thing that fascinates me is the prevalence of facial recognition software.
Yeah.
Because I'm starting to wonder, now that we as Americans, Britons, wherever your audience is, are on camera more times in a given day than most people in the past were on camera in a year. You go down Main Street, you're on cameras, ring doorbells, catch you when you're out walking your dog. I'm starting to wonder, how often are cameras catching people that are in fact apparitions?
Absolutely.
And logically, when facial recognition software starts doing its thing, it's going to start recognizing them, right? When the faces of once living people in its database start turning up and a check reveals that they're dead, that's going to make this a very interesting state of affairs. So I'm already looking into some reports of hearing like ring doorbell ghost stories.
Yep.
Yep. Makes me wonder. And so cameras everywhere, microphones everywhere. You'd think we should be experiencing a new heyday of evidence.
Isn't it something? It'll be interesting to see where we go with all of that. We have about 8 minutes left. Where is in the book Ghostly Encounters, Terrifyingly True Hauntings? Where is the location that you think that if we haven't talked about it, that you'd like to kind of let us know about?
Less of a location, more of a case. And it is the case of the R101 airship.
Okay.
Now, as a Doctor Who fan yourself, Greg, you might know about this from the 8th Doctor audio episode, Storm Warning.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
But in reality, the R101 was the Titanic of the skies. Britain was building this enormous airship program, or was planning to anyway, in the late 1920s into the 1930s. We had an empire to control. Sorry about that, by the way. And the idea was that these big airships would be able to convey troops, logistics, support, munitions, VIPs from London, the heart of the empire, to some of these far-flung colonies fairly quickly by air. Seemed like a great idea, right? So two giant airships were commissioned, the R100 and the R101, differing designs, but they were essentially sister ships. The R101 on its maiden flight ran into some bad weather at night. We're talking about 1930 now, October of 1930. Ran into a terrible storm as she was crossing across the French countryside. She went down, hit the ground. The gas bags ruptured, and as the gas was released, it flowed over the red hot engines, ignited, and boom, you got this massive fireball.
Jeez.
And something like, I don't know the exact number off the top of my head. Forgive me, I wrote this book a year ago, but almost all of her crew and passengers died in the fireball. Absolutely horrific way to die. Yeah. Anyway, that's tragic enough. The bodies were then, or I should say the remains, were shipped to Britain from France. The French Prime Minister was present. There was a full honor guard. Royal Navy destroyers came for these flag-draped coffins, and they lay in state in London before they were interred in the churchyard at Cardington, where the R101 had flown from. Right? So, all very tragic. And it would turn out that as more and more evidence came out, Greg, R101 had been pushed by bureaucrats in order to be less safe to kind of make the record. There's the Titanic parallel, a captain that's pushing the ship through ice floes at night too fast in order to break the Atlantic crossing record. The captain of the R101, though, had been forced to do it by Sir Sefton Branca, who was the top British air minister, and he was on board the R101 on that maiden flight. Now, what's interesting is less than 2 days after the crash, our old friend Harry Price, the paranormal investigator, is holding a seance with a medium called Eileen Garrett. They don't care anything about this airship. They are trying to reach the spirit of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who just died in July. Of course, that speaks to your earlier point about if you are into the paranormal and spiritualism, will it be easier to communicate? Well, Doyle doesn't come through. The captain of the R101, Flight Lieutenant Irvin, Royal Air Force, comes through, and he is not a happy man. He tells Eileen Garrett, who was very much blue collar, this is not a woman with any kind of engineering background or much of a formal education, but she starts spitting out these phrases of aeronautical engineering that civilians should not know. She was saying things like, we scraped the rooftops in Aki, which was a small French town not on most maps. Indeed, R101 had, as she was distressed coming in for a final crash landing. He said that the frame was too heavy, which it was. It was soaked with rainwater, and that even made it heavier. There was not enough useful lift, so R101 could not, fly. All of these things would later be proved accurate when they did the crash investigation, and they came through the mouth of a woman that should have known absolutely nothing about how airships worked, let alone how they crashed. And the crew of the R101 kept coming through at subsequent seances. And Flight Lieutenant Irvin actually said, we feel like damned murderers. That's a quote. Because they had not pushed back on the government pressure to push R101 out there fast, shortening the safety trials, making her less safe. So it fascinates me because if this is true, if this is correct, and there's some pretty compelling documentary evidence to support it, Greg, the ghosts of the men that died in that crash came back to tell the rest of us why that airship went down. And there's a weird little corollary to this as well, because R101's skeleton, the metal frame, was what could be salvaged, was broken up for scrap, and it was sold to the Zeppelin company in Germany. Some of it ended up in an airship called the Hindenburg.
No way. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Incredible.
And we all know how that ended up. So the British airship program died with the death of R101. The German program died with the death of the Hindenburg. Those two crashes were kind of linked by some scrap metal, interestingly enough. But it's the spirits of the crew of R101, who are all buried together, by the way, in one mass grave in Cardington in the churchyard, that told us the tale of why she went down that rainy night over France.
It's absolutely incredible. We are pretty much out of time, but I want to say real fast, most people don't get a book out in their lifetime. You had 2 come out here, this week or something. We have about a minute. Do you want to tell us what's the other book, Mothman?
Absolutely. So this is it, Mothman, co-written with my friend Tobias Wayland, with a foreword by the excellent author and researcher David Weatherly. Simply
David.
because we are, David's a great dude, and so is Tobias, but we are heading into creepy season. And so these are very different books, but they will both scratch your weird itch, which may be the worst quote I've ever given about one of my own books. Differently, If cryptids and flying creatures are your thing, please check out the Mothman book. If you'd like a scary story for a cold autumn fall night, go with Ghostly Encounters. Or do an Old Man of Solid and pick them both.
Yeah, I think get them both. That's the way to go on that. Let's see, Ghostly Encounters, Terrifyingly True Hauntings, published by Visible Ink, and then Mothman, published by Llewellyn.
Absolutely.
So, yep, and go to your local bookstore, pick them up, and get them, and let us know what you think. That's the fun part, hearing the feedback and what did you learn, what did you get from them. That's the important thing about these books, is that not only you presenting the information, but then we can take it and we can kind of create our own opinions from it too.
Absolutely. And my thanks in advance to anyone that parts with their hard-earned money and time for one of my books. I always really appreciate it.
And I appreciate you, Richard. I do not take it for granted, you taking time and coming on tonight. Thank you very, very much.
Thanks very much for having me.
Very, very much so. Folks, we're going to be back tomorrow. We're going to be talking about Nikola Tesla. Everyone, have a fantastic evening, and thanks for listening.